Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are diving deep into, well, what I really think is the single most foundational element of communication success right now, building a media list in 2025. And I have to stress that
Yeah.
specific year seriously. If your team is still using methods from, say, 2020, you're not really engaging journalists. You're basically just hitting the spam filter automatic. Media landscape has just changed too much. So our mission today is to give you the blueprint. We're going to walk you through the exact process, finding, verifying, organizing media contacts so they actually align with your PR goals. We need to make sure every minute you spend on outreach is, a strategic investment, not just blasting emails out to some generic list.
And that strategic thinking, it's absolutely more critical now than ever before. I mean, we've all seen newsrooms shrink, right? Journalists are constantly changing beats, changing outlets, sometimes moving every 6 to 12 months. It's incredibly fast. Because of this high turnover, if your list is stale, honestly, your entire PR effort is dead before it even starts. The goal isn't just getting any coverage. It's about building genuine, durable relationships with the people who can deliver your story to the exact audience you need to reach, that level of precision. That's the difference between, well, a wasted announcement and PR success that actually moves the needle for your business.
Couldn't agree more. So let's start right at the beginning, the absolute foundation, because you can't just start collecting names until you know who needs to hear your story in the first place. Where do we begin that targeting process?
You begin with your audience, always, not the journalist. The bedrock of any successful media outreach campaign is knowing exactly who consumes your message. If you skip this part, you're basically just guessing. We need really detailed audience profiling. It has to move past the standard demographics like age and location. You need to focus instead on their actual consumption habits. So we challenge you. Profile your audience using 4 key consumption questions. These pretty much dictate your whole strategy. First, what specific publications, digital or print, do they actually read daily? Second, which podcasts or newsletters do they prioritize, maybe during their commute? Third, what social media platforms do they genuinely trust for news? Not just, entertainment, but actual news. And fourth, do they prefer quick video content or maybe long-form investigative articles? Or just quick news bites? What's their format?
Yeah, I think this is exactly where a lot of people get it wrong. They sort of assume their audience consumes media exactly the way they do. But that breakdown you just mentioned, it forces you to really acknowledge how fragmented the landscape is now. Like your B2B software audience might be religiously following super specific industry newsletters and LinkedIn threads, while a consumer product audience, they might get all their purchase inspiration and news from, say, TikTok or Instagram influencers and creators, completely different worlds.
That fragmentation is the absolute crucial context for 2025. Your success is fundamentally determined by the alignment between your audience's preferences and your journalist selection. You're not just looking for someone who covers retail. You're searching for journalists whose readers, listeners, or viewers align perfectly with your target demographic. This exercise, it transforms your media list from just an address book into a proper strategic targeting document.
Okay, right. Let's unpack this then and get into the actual data. We've identified the target audience. Now we need to build a list that's, well, richer and smarter than anything our competitors might be using. A modern list, it needs these enriched data points. That gives you a competitive advantage through hyper-personalization. We start with the basics, naturally. Full name, current job title, outlet, accurate direct email addresses. And please, we are absolutely avoiding those generic newsroom inboxes. They're black holes. Phone numbers, too, where possible.
Exactly. And don't skimp on documenting the specific specialties. The beat. Is the journalist covering enterprise tech, or are they focused only on consumer-facing startups?
Yeah.
Big difference. Location still matters, too, especially if you're dealing with regional news. You have to be specific about what they cover right now.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. Moving beyond the basics. Let's talk about the 5 data points that turn a generic directory into a truly strategic outreach tool. First up, robust social media profiles. LinkedIn, Twitter X, maybe even Instagram handles. These are really crucial for seeing their professional interests and sometimes even their communication style. Second, recent article links. And I mean recent. Don't just trust the bio on the website. Track their latest, say, 5 to 10 published pieces. This shows you their current focus areas. If their official bio says they cover travel, but their last 10 articles are all about post-pandemic hospitality labor issues. You pitch the labor issue, right? Not the vacation spot.
Absolutely. Third is the use of influence scores. These metrics help you prioritize your outreach efforts. Now, for someone listening who maybe doesn't have access to one of those massive, expensive media databases, how do they actually measure real influence? Are we just relying on, Twitter followers, or is there a better way to gauge this manually?
That's a really crucial distinction. We absolutely need to move beyond just vanity metrics, like follower count. Influence today, it's more about engagement and domain authority. You need to look at the quality of interaction, the comments, the retweets, the shares they generate. You can often get a feel for that just by scrolling their recent work or posts. Domain weight is also key. A journalist who's regularly published in a top-tier trade publication or a major national newspaper carries significant weight, even if their personal social media presence is, relatively modest. It's really about the quality of their reach, not just the sheer number of followers.
Okay, got it. And the fourth point is all about that qualitative intelligence. Personal notes. This is where you actually document things like their preferred pitch formats, maybe patterns in their response times, or specific niche interests you discovered during your research. This data point, I think, is arguably the most valuable one.
Yeah, I agree it's valuable, but let's be blunt for a second. Doesn't tracking a journalist's specific habits or, say, their niche tweets walk a pretty fine line between useful personalization and maybe being a bit intrusive? How do we use this qualitative data ethically without making the journalists feel like they're being surveilled?
That is exactly the right question to be asking. The line is definitely crossed when you use genuinely intrusive personal details. We absolutely must stick strictly to professional interests and observable communication patterns. For example, if they tweet about how frustrated they are getting boilerplate pitches about crypto when they only cover consumer goods, that's a professional note you should definitely log. Useful. If they tweet about their cat or their vacation plans, that stays completely off the list. The goal here is showing you respect their work and their time, not invading their privacy.
Right. Professional context only. Makes sense.
And finally, the fifth point. You need to track deadline preferences. You can often infer this just by looking at their publishing schedule. Do they seem to publish new stuff early in the morning? That might suggest they prefer to clear their inbox by midday. Knowing whether they prefer morning pitches or maybe work late can significantly improve your response rates. You're hitting them when they're actually focused on finding stories.
Okay, so now that we know what kind of enriched data we need, let's talk about the actual mechanics. How do we build, verify, and then manage this living document?
Well, list building today, it really requires a blend. It's a mix of sometimes expensive technology and pretty intensive manual research. You have the budget, the paid route uses those professional databases, Muckrack, Cision, Prowly, those kinds of platforms. They offer convenience, they offer scale, definitely, but they are costly. Annual fees can range from, $3,000 up to $20,000 or even more. And crucially, even with that cost, data freshness is always a challenge. As we said, journalists move faster than these databases can often update.
Okay, so if we want that control and that guaranteed freshness that the DIY approach offers, what are the specific manual techniques? It sounds like this is less about casting a wide net and more about sniper-like accuracy.
It is absolutely precision work.
Yeah.
We recommend 5 key techniques here. First, focused Google News searches. Search for your topic plus terms like contributor or journalist to find recent, relevant bylines. Second, really leverage LinkedIn advanced search. Filter by job title, company, industry keywords, get specific. Third, proactively monitor Twitter X hashtag searches. Look for industry-specific tags, and especially the commonly used hashtag journal request. That's where reporters are openly asking for sources.
Oh yeah, that hashtag search is pure gold sometimes. It gives you immediate insight into what they are literally working on right now.
Exactly. Fourth, never overlook the basics. Always check publication staff directories directly on the outlet websites. They're often the most accurate source for email format, even if the beat description itself is a bit out of date. And fifth, conduct some competitor analysis. See who consistently covers your main rivals. Those journalists are already interested in your industry space, most likely.
Right. And once you find potential contacts, verification is the step you absolutely, positively cannot skip. Given the constant turnover we keep talking about, skipping verification is basically committing to wasting hours on dead-end pitches, isn't it? So what does verification actually involve?
It involves 2 really crucial checks. First, beat confirmation. You must look beyond just the generic title on their profile. Search the journalist's name on Google News, analyze their last 5 to 10 articles. Has that business reporter who used to cover IPOs suddenly shifted their entire focus to regulatory policy? You absolutely need to know that, or your pitch is just irrelevant noise. And remember, their Twitter or X profiles often reflect beat changes before the official publication bios catch up. Check there too.
Good tip. And the second check.
Data accuracy. This isn't just about successful email delivery, it's about protecting your sender reputation. It really is. If your email lists have high bounce rates from old, outdated addresses, email providers like Google and Outlook start flagging your domain. They see it as low quality, potentially spammy, and that damages your ability to reach any journalist down the line. So always verify emails, check the publication's website format, double check on their LinkedIn profile if you can.
Okay, verification is non-negotiable. Got it. What about organizing all this?
Right, organization. Look, spreadsheets are fine for small lists, maybe under 50 contacts, but anything larger, they become unwieldy almost immediately. And forget collaboration. PR CRM software is just far superior for this. It allows for smart tagging and filtering. You can instantly pull up all financial journalists who cover fintech and prefer video interviews. Try doing that easily in Excel. It also handles outreach tracking, making sure you never accidentally send the same pitch twice, and allows for automated reminders and team coordination. Much more efficient.
And crucially, this list, it's not a filing cabinet project you finish once, it's a dynamic, living asset. So what's the maintenance schedule look like?
You absolutely must set a mandatory quarterly review schedule. No excuses. Every 3 months, you need to go in, update job changes, remove bounced emails immediately, add notes from any recent interactions you've had, and archive contacts who've left journalism entirely. Keep it clean. Maintenance is honestly the difference between maybe a 5% response rate and a 25% response rate. You have to budget actual time for it.
Okay, so let's bring this all home now. What does all this detailed research and maintenance effort actually mean for the execution, for the outreach itself?
The effort spent on research, it pays off exponentially when you actually reach out. Remember what we said. Personalization is completely non-negotiable now. Journalists can spot a generic copy-paste pitch instantly. Delete. You absolutely must use those collected personal notes, those recent article links, to craft truly one-to-one outreach. For instance, reference a journalist's recent article on, say, sustainable packaging, and then explain how your story about a new recyclable material is the perfect follow-up to their existing narrative. You're showing them you've actually read their work, you respect it, you haven't just scraped their contact info from somewhere.
And timing is still critical, right?
Oh, definitely. Study their publication habits. Are they typically cranking out news stories early in the morning? Maybe pitch them midday when they might be looking for new angles? Generally speaking, try to avoid Mondays. Inboxes are just overflowing. And Fridays can be tough too, as reporters are often wrapping up stories and heading into the weekend. Midweek tends to be better.
What about follow-up? How do you do that without being annoying?
Yeah, the follow-up strategy needs to focus on building the relationship, not just pestering them. That's key. If you don't hear back within, say, 3 to 5 business days, send a brief follow-up. And critically, it needs to add value. Maybe offer a new data point or a slightly different angle on the original story. Don't just bump the old email. And track every single interaction in your CRM. You need to know exactly when and how often you've reached out to someone.
We've really made the case for the effort involved in this DIY approach. Let's really hammer home why that investment ultimately delivers better ROI than just, buying a list off a vendor. I think the biggest difference is that control over relevance and context.
Exactly. You're not just gaining relevance. You're gaining vital strategic context. Purchase lists often feel like these static phone books, just filled with thousands of irrelevant, often unverified contacts. Your DIY list, the one you've meticulously built and maintained, that's a strategic map. Because you manually confirmed those recent articles, you collected those personal notes, you aren't just pitching to the journalist, you're pitching into their established narrative, into their current interests. And that's why your response rate climbs so dramatically. It's because you've demonstrated deep competence and, frankly, respect for their specific beat in their time.
So effective media lists in 2025, they really demand continuous attention, continuous refinement. You cannot just build it once and expect it to keep working indefinitely. You absolutely have to see it as a dynamic asset that requires ongoing investment.
That's absolutely right. But personalization, fueled by that enriched, accurate, up-to-date data that is your single biggest competitive advantage in PR today. Your ability to reference journalists' recent work, to understand their specific interest, and deliver genuinely relevant stories, that determines if they even open your message or just hit delete. Simple as that.
So we've firmly established that the maintenance, the refinement of this list is just as important, if not more so, than the initial build.
Absolutely. So here's something to think about. Considering the constant turnover in the industry, that non-negotiable need for verification we talked about, and those mandatory quarterly reviews, how much time should relationship maintenance, the actual ongoing stewardship of that list, account for in your total PR workflow budget? How much time do you need to allocate to ensure those connections continue to drive consistent, high-quality results year after year? Something for you to really mull over as you build out your strategy for next year.
Definitely food for thought. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.